Hello, Heath. Welcome to the show.
Moshe, it's great to be here. So thankful the timing worked out.
Yeah, I appreciate you joining us. So tell us, what is RO and who's it for?
Man, that has evolved. What a great question. So the easiest way to describe RO is a screen time modeling tool for families. Now, when I concepted this idea, my kids were kind of late elementary to middle school. And I really thought that families buying it would kind of look like mine. Now, my kids are teenagers now, so right, they've had these devices for a couple of years, so it's a little more difficult to break habits. But today, Arho has been for younger families who want to model a different behavior, a different relationship with their devices before they give their kids what I call infinity in their pocket.
So it's you've got a physical device, which is this box that is a charger, but it's also this kind of visual cue to put away your phone, and it has an accompanying app with all of these kind of game mechanics and kind of behavior change type incentives, if you will, to break that addiction that we all have to our cell phones, right?
Yeah, it's a combination of hardware and software, like you said. We would argue that we don't think it classifies as an addiction. It's just a bad habit, right? And habits can be changed. Addiction says you need to abstain. Addiction says you don't have power. You lack agency. We think that we have the power to make those changes. But we knew that we couldn't just build a software. This years ago when I had this idea, I tried every software available. And frankly, this whole business is built upon my own personal failings of trying to disconnect from technology. My prior life, I was also an entrepreneur, and sometimes your identity gets wrapped up in being an entrepreneur, and you feel like you need to stay busy. And I guess I was going to say for better. It turned out that I started a company to try to solve for some of my own personal failures.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're classifying not as an addiction, because I was reading this book, How to Break Up with Your Phone. I'm sure you're familiar with it. And in there, actually, I think in the introduction, it quotes this test developed by Dr. David Greenfield from the Center of Internet and Technology Addiction. And basically, it's a 15 question survey. And if you score 5 or above, it is likely that you have a problematic or compulsive smartphone use pattern. If you score 8 or above, you might consider seeking a psychologist, psychiatrist, or psychotherapist who specializes in behavior addictions. I think I scored like a 12 or 13 and I got terrified. So I'm glad that you're saying that it's not an addiction, but it is a bad habit.
Yeah, I think the test might be a little outdated. I think most of us would score 12 to 15 on that. And look, the reality is these devices are wonderful. They're captivating. Social media in particular is something that can garner a lot of our attention. But I think too often we focus on the phone and we don't focus on the relationship we have with the phone. These are wonderful tools. I mean, I'm not giving mine up anytime soon. I guess you're probably not either. These are part of our lives, which is why this is a business built upon a sustainable habit model, as opposed to, throwing this out and saying, let's go back to, phones on the wall or the flip phone. That's not tenable.
Yeah. So you're currently in the throes of product market fit. You've been in market for about a year with selling the device?
Yeah, we launched almost 1 year ago today. So very, very close.
Awesome. So talk to us, tell me how would you define product market fit? What signals are you watching most closely at this early stage?
I mean, there's quantitative answers to that, and I'll give you some qualitative as well. I mean, we're following I'll call it the Sean Ellis test, where if 40% of our customers say they'd be very disappointed, that we feel like we've got product market fit. So we're doing those surveys now. We're hovering around 30. So we're, on right track. Now, I don't know if going from 30 to 40 is 2 years or 2 months or 2 weeks, but, we've got a little bit of distance to climb there. And then we're just asking our customers a lot of questions. We read a book called The Mom Test. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that, but basically it's a great way to say, all right, your mom's always going to tell you she loves what you built or what you've done. Like, you need to ask better questions so you don't get the mom answers. And frankly, it was pretty transformational for me, because it really changed how I approach customer conversations. And even at a conference or even on a phone call, just the way I'm a much better listener, and, tell me more as opposed to let me tell you, what we're working on. So we're in the throes of those conversations now, just trying to understand, okay, what is working with the device? What's working with the app? What's working with the combination of the two? And, what do we need to change to make it even more appealing?
Yeah. The decision that you made to build this as a hybrid hardware and software product. Walk me through that reasoning or that thought process, because I imagine when you started, there was the problem state, right, that you recognized in yourself and your partner, your co-founder, and then you realized that there's a lot of people who suffer from similar problem. How do we solve it? How did that get to we need hardware and software? Because I imagine that there are unique challenges to building both.
Oh yeah, well, everyone told me the hardware is hard, and I always tell them, you're wrong. It's excruciating. It's not just hard; it's so painful. And they were right. So, but when I realized this was a problem of my own, I did attempt to buy apps that told me to get off my apps, right? And I always tell folks it's very difficult to put a solution inside of the problem. And the example I'll give is, if you are a smoker and someone said, I still want you to carry around the pack of cigarettes, but I'm going to put, a little cap or a piece of tape on top of it, there's a chance you're going to get around, the firewalls, if you will. So I just didn't find that an app worked. And it was this moment where I woke up one day and I thought, oh no, this is a hardware and a software company, not just a software company. And I say that from experience. My first company was a software company. Software is a lot easier. It's a lot faster. You can make changes on the fly. Hardware, you got to invest a lot of time in product development. And then once you decide that you're, stopping features, you're done. And, if you haven't done the right user testing and feedback along the way, you just never know if it's going to work. So there's a lot more risk involved with it. But we knew that software alone wouldn't solve the problem. So we were willing to say, all right, we're going all in on a combo solution.
Got it. So is the product that you currently have today, is that what you launched with, or have you pivoted since launch?
No, we did launch with that. I would say, your question on product market fit. So the product, I gave you one answer on the product side. The other side of that phrase is market, right? The one thing we've learned on the market side is that initially we thought families with kids who have phones, call it that 11 to 16-year-old range, would be our primary target market. And yes, we have people buying in that stage of life, but the truth is most people, when they get to that stage, it's really hard to pull back. Once your child has a phone, you can set some rules and restrictions, but man, to tell them to put it down just gets more and more difficult. We found that younger families, kids that don't have phones, have really adopted this, and it's for one really specific reason. These parents are forward thinking and kind of playing the long game to say, hey, if my child or children see that I'm doing things differently with this device, by the time I give them a device, they will model my behavior. Because previously our we call it the 4 M's, but we've modeled bad behavior with our phones. I'm talking to myself right here, and maybe you as well. We model bad behavior. Our kids, what do? They mimic that, right? Then we have the audacity to get mad at them. And then we try to manage it, and we ultimately mismanage it. So we're trying to kind of flip that whole model to say, model it today. It'll make it so much easier in the future when you do give them this incredible device, and they are incredible.
Yeah. So that's really interesting learning. I'm sure that you kind of trial and error, right? As it comes to product market fit, you're out there experimenting with different audiences, different segments, and understanding that that nuance that differentiated one group, right? You might just bucket them as parents with children who are looking to solve, bad cell phone behavior, but to slice it even further and to realize that they're unique segments, and maybe there's a different product that you need for that other segment, but the product you have today is better suited for, like you said, younger families, and that's where you focus.
Yeah, absolutely. And it even flows through. Every time I talk about product market fit, I always put a, open parentheses, ING, product marketing fit as well. So you think about messaging, even on something simple as when someone comes to our website, being able to identify themselves as a family with kids who have phones or not, or, even a combo, the messaging is radically different for those two audiences. So we're having to think through, all right, how do we make sure we're talking to, a mom in certain cases that stays at home with her kids, or two working parents, or, again, it gets very complex. You can't just say families with kids. So it's a great point.
Fantastic. What about the decisions around pricing? So the device itself is free with a monthly subscription. And you also have an annual subscription as well. What testing did you do with regards to pricing, and how did you land where you're at today?
Well, first off, I would say it's still up in the air. I think there's two ways to charge for a hardware product. If you're familiar with the Aura Ring or Whoop, they're both heart rate trackers, and one has a membership only, and the other charges for the piece of hardware and has a lower membership rate. We're still looking at both. I do think, we built this beautiful device, right? And I do think people place a value on that, much like they would a Bluetooth speaker or a charging pad or anything that you put in your home. And this is meant to live in a home. It's meant to live, in a kitchen or family room. It's meant to be that visual cue to start that habit loop. So initially we started with, the subscription service, but we will probably test in the near future. I call it the Peloton or the Oura Ring model, where you are charging for the actual piece of hardware and then a different subscription along with that. So that's TBD. But for now, we've been applying the Whoop model, as I call it, and that's worked pretty well. Certainly to get people, in the door and what we need more than anything right now are users to get feedback from, and we need the right users. This is another kind of layer to product market fit. Early on, we had a lot of organizations that said, hey, we want to give this to our employees, or not-for-profits that said we want to give it to our donors. And we learned pretty quickly that gifts aren't always going to the right customer. So we actually cut that off and said, look, we can only sell to people that have, opted into this solution. The last thing someone wants to get sometimes is a treadmill that says you need to run more, or an RO box that says you need to get off your phone. So we've learned some things along the way to make sure that we're putting this in the right customer's hands so that it feeds back into that, product market fit process.
Yeah, it's like getting a gift certificate to the local gym as a gift. It's like, it's a very subtle hint.
Yeah, what are you saying?
Yeah, exactly. So how are you finding those customers, or how are they finding you today?
Yeah, so I would say our two primary channels today have been social media. We need to fish where the fish are. And, a lot. It's funny to see how many orders we get between 12 a.m. and 1 a.m. of someone scrolling Instagram. They're like, oh, no, yes, I need this. I've been up for 2 or 3 hours. But really, we're just trying to create a brand in the social space that says, hey, we all know that our relationships with our phones are a bit out of whack. Science tells us the only way to change our habits is to actually not have it on us, right? And 91% of Americans keep our phones with us 24 hours a day, right? That means we sleep with them as well. So there's something powerful to distance, kind of out of sight, peace of mind. So social media, again, we want to fish where the fish are. And then secondly, frankly, podcasts have been a huge marketing outlet for us. This is such a poignant topic for families right now. We say that screen time is now the number one battleground in most families, above drugs, above sex, above alcohol. It really is the thing that most families argue about. And as a result, people want to talk about it. So we've spent a lot of time on, parenting podcasts, family podcasts, tech podcasts, just telling the story. Because this is not unlike exercise. This is an aspirational purchase that says, hey, I want to be better, right? And actually, this is where it started for me. I said, I want to be better for my family, and I want my family to be better. So being able to tell the story and tell the origination of it, and frankly, just tell people, like, we get it, we failed. Like I was the worst perpetrator of, overuse of my phone and ignoring everyone that was important to me. So this is a no shame, no guilt. We're just here to try to help families.
Yeah. Guilty as charged. This is something that's, I know we talked about it before we hit record, but it's something that personally, I felt a need to look for solutions. So glad that a device like this is out there. What kind of the game mechanics that you build in, and also the psychology of behavior change? Obviously, it's an entire field of psychology, behavioral economics, how people make decisions, and different cognitive biases that we have built in and things like that. How did you go about researching those, designing those into the product? Do you have psychologists on staff, or that you had consultants come in to help you with that? I'm really curious about that part of the product development part of it.
Yeah. Early on, honestly, I read a bunch. I read every habit book that I could get my hands on, including, Atomic Habits and Tiny Habits and everything in between. And that was a little bit of an aha moment, back to the hardware question of, I think you could build some kind of a cue into the phone, but it's not going to be as in your face as an actual, artifact that lives in your home. So to start that habit loop, you need that visual cue, and the craving and the reward and everything that goes to create that process. So a lot of it was just self-taught. Now, when we started to build the app, we did work with, for lack of a better word, a gamification expert to help us build in some of those encouragements and nudges and a process along the way to get people involved early on. But that will continue to evolve. It's interesting, with any kind of habit. I mean, exercise again is a great example. Like I've been pretty committed my whole life to staying healthy, but man, I get bored sometimes, and I need some help, or I need something new, or I need a change up, or I need encouragement from a friend, or frankly, I need accountability from a friend. So, with every month or week that goes by, we're learning more and more that we've got to be, we got to have a little bit of variation in the way that we gamify the approach. And honestly, early on, we were very light-handed with our clients. Like the last thing we wanted to do was overwhelm them with notifications from yet another app. It's kind of counterproductive. But the more we hear from our clients, they're saying, wait a minute, I paid you to help me put this thing down. Remind me, help me schedule, lift me up when I do it. So yeah, it's an entire, that will be ever changing and a lot of fun along the way. And it's also going to be dependent on, kind of where the market shifts in terms of who's buying Aura going forward.
Sure. What surprised you the most about how people have used the device or some of the feedback that you've gotten from users?
I would say the level of consistency in terms of times of day. So we've got this kind of cool heat map that shows, when everyone uses it. Typically, you have this spike in the morning. I call it the morning routine, whether that's breakfast with the kids, or maybe it's some kind of a daily ritual that you have. Then that, call it 5 to 9 p.m. period when families are typically in the house together. And then you'll sometimes have more of the Sabbath approach on a Saturday or Sunday, depending on the religious background, but a longer period of time on the weekends. So what I tell customers when I talk to them is like, look, just define what time is sacred to you, right? And focus on that. And it can only be 15 minutes. I mean, even 15 minutes can make a big difference. It could be that one conversation. Well, she said he had a 13-year-old daughter. Man, when I've got two 17-year-olds now, 15 and a 13-year-old, I can tell you when they're 13 to 15, that is a very impressionable time period, that kind of late middle school, early high school. And the last thing you want to do when your daughter's getting ready to tell you something is to sneak a glance at your phone, because you'll kill that moment of vulnerability. And then it gets that much harder going forward. So even those 15 minutes where you can be locked in and say, I'm here. Oh, you want to have a conversation? Let me put my phone down, right? Let's actually have a conversation. Those are times we don't want to miss. So for us, like the most sacred time in our family is when we can have family dinners together, right? And life is busy, sports or activities or whatever. But if there's 2 days a week or 3 days a week where we have 45 minutes to an hour, it's not just a rule, it's an imperative that our phones are in RO, because most of the time it's 7 to 10 minutes of how's your day going. Then about that 14, 15 minutes, someone says something that then sparks a conversation. And the last 30 minutes are the richest part of that dialogue. And I'm staring college in the face for my two seniors in high school, man, I'm trying to cherish every minute that I've got, because we're 8 or 9 months away from them, being out of the house. So I encourage especially young families, and this is, as old as day, but, time does fly, of course. And the last thing I want to do is look back and say, I wish I'd have spent less time on my phone.
Yeah. I don't think anybody on their deathbed says, I wish I spent more time on my phone, right?
I know.
What about for founders? This is the audience that we're talking to, mostly early stage founders.
Yeah.
There's, I would imagine, a higher need for or sense of urgency around their phone. It could be an investor or a customer or team member emailing, slacking. Is it practical for them to create such habits, and any specific tips that you have for us in this lifestyle that's kind of very uniquely suited for excessive cell phone dependency?
Yeah. Well, I've been there. This is my second startup, and again, this is what led to me founding the business, was my own kind of failures on that front. But this is no shame, no guilt. Look, we're busy, you're busy, founders are busy. So there is an elevated need to be connected. At the same time, if founders don't rest and recharge and find rejuvenation and time to think, I think that's what we're probably missing most as founders right now, is that opportunity for creative thought. Yes, if you've got a family, you need to spend some time with them, but you also need to take time to actually think about the business, not just look at Slack, not just answer emails, not just be on customer calls. So even if it's, because look, for me, when I'm at the office, call it 8 to 5 or 6, whatever the hours are, I'm probably going to be using my phone. That's not ideal RO time for me. But I also schedule time where, hey, for this 30 minutes or 45 minutes, I just need to think about, are we making the right decisions? Like pricing is a good example. I've spent a lot of time recently thinking about, all right, here's the trade-offs between a pure subscription model and a model where we charge for hardware and a different subscription. But I can't do that if I'm constantly connected. I'm just never going to have clarity of thought. So I guess I would just offer some encouragement to say, look, I know you're busy. I'm busy. Just carve out a little bit of time. And I know if you've got a distraction, whether that's your phone or iPad or laptop, it's going to get in the way. So if that means going on a walk, if that means, I don't know, sitting out back in a pool, if you got a pool or whatever, just try to find a place where, you don't need your phone and it gives you time to breathe. For me, I go trail running. So I'll go on a 30 or 45-minute trail run. I have my best thoughts. I get back in the car and I'm immediately punching notes in my phone and say, all right, here are the 2 or 3 things that came to mind. And I guarantee you, if I would have taken my phone and listened to music or listened to a podcast, I love podcasts, but I've constantly listened to podcasts. I never have time to think on my own.
That's super interesting. We talk about RO, or just generally these kind of habits and digital detoxes, as ways to improve our connection with others. But I think that the connection with ourselves and our thoughts, and that space to think and to be bored and to allow creative thought to come into our minds, is also being robbed from us. I know for myself that I feel like I've developed ADD because of this constant need for stimulus or accumulation of stimuli. So getting back to just, you mentioned the Sabbath. I have, as a religious Jew, I have a Sabbath built into my week. And every week I turn off my phone for 25 hours. And during those 25 hours, it's not even a thought in my mind that I would turn on my phone, because it's like a non-negotiable for me. But that doesn't make it any easier the other 6 days a week. That you would think that if I'm practicing a 1 day a week, I'd be super good at controlling it the rest of the week. But it doesn't. It's something you got to practice throughout the day.
Well, it's actually not surprising. I think if you were to talk to anyone who goes to one of these week-long detoxes, right, or goes away where they don't have cell coverage, they come back so refreshed and rejuvenated, but they fall right back into it immediately. And I would argue it's because we just don't have, our lifestyle is not built around sustainability in this area of life. We have a place for everything else, right? You have a place to sleep, you have a place to put your car, your silverware, but you have a place for your phone, and you probably put it on the table in front of you or in your back pocket. And the truth is, like, if you have this thing, you're going to use it. And science would actually tell you, even if you see it and you're not using it, it equates to usage because you're anticipating what's next. So it's just hard, right? And I think the only way to do it is to turn it off like you're describing, or put it in RO where it's being tracked, and to have it out of sight. Otherwise, it's just too tempting.
Yeah. So let's get back to growth for the company. What channels, you mentioned social media currently is your biggest in terms of customer acquisition, podcasting. Have you done anything intentional to spur word of mouth or community-led type of organic growth? Is that a channel that you're focused on? And what additional channels do you see being most important to your growth in the coming 2 to 3 years, I would say?
Yeah, well, interestingly, we started this business in the middle of COVID. And when I concepted it years before that, initially it started as a corporate solution. My thought was I would put these in every conference room. We'd have more productive meetings. You'd be able to benchmark yourself productivity-wise versus other organizations. I even thought of it as a mental health employee benefit. But when COVID hit, we thought, well, no one's in an office. It just doesn't seem like a good time to focus there. And I mentioned that because I do see a future where there's a corporate version of RO, or a hospitality version of RO as well. I mean, there's plenty of resorts that are built for getaways like this. But we always say that real change starts at home, which is why we started with the consumer. So today we're solely focused on the consumer. We're a small team, and if we try to do corporate hospitality and consumer, we'd fail miserably at all three. So today we're solely focused there. And as it pertains to product market fit, selling something to a consumer is a very different experience on a 24 by 365 versus an hour-long meeting at the office or a 3-day weekend at a resort. So that's been our focus. But channels in the future, I can see us developing more partnerships with like-minded organizations like those that sell actual kid-safe tech phones, as an example. We have not really spent much time working with an influencer community or the affiliate community, frankly, just from a budget maximization standpoint. We wanted to see what we could do on our own. So there's some opportunities there as well if we can get the right like-minded individuals associated with us. We're not pursuing a retail strategy right now, particularly because it's subscription only. I think if we were to actually sell, the hardware, maybe it works better in that environment. But today we haven't pursued that. But that would not surprise me if that's a kind of a longer term strategy as we move as we try to diversify away from fully DTC.
Got it. And you envision a multi-product company, right? It's going to be different product lines, different use cases, right?
Absolutely. And getting back to the hardware conversation, I actually envision a future where we have a freemium app only solution. I could see the app being a standalone. I don't think it solves a problem, fully, but frankly, we have people all over the world emailing us saying, "Hey, can you bring this to New Zealand and Ireland and Germany?" It's like, well, building a hardware product globally is difficult. But if we could help them at least start that process with an app and maybe help them DIY their own box or own enclosure, something that gets them closer to it, I see an opportunity there. So yeah, I see kind of a full stack offering across. And look, there have been some people that have done this already. I think Peloton's experimenting with this now. They started fully as hardware, and they've kind of but added the app only experience. So there's some some examples that we can follow.
Yeah, you mentioned difficulties of selling hardware internationally. I just wanted to double click on that real quick. Are you talking the logistical and expense of that? Are you talking about local regulations with hardware? What are you specifically referring to?
Everything. All that and more and more and more, right? So different power supplies, different regulations, tariffs, everything.
Distribution partners.
Yeah, it's very difficult. So again, this gets back to, that's why I think software initially can be much more scalable. Not that obviously people have done it. You can buy an iPhone anywhere. But it's going to take a while to get to the scale where it makes sense for us to move internationally. And with my first business, we were software only. We did not launch. Let me think back. It probably took us 8 years before we launched even north into Canada. Now, pretty quickly thereafter, UK and Australia and Europe and Asia. But man, that's one of those decisions that takes a lot of brain power, takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of money. And I want to make sure, the whole point of this podcast is product market fit. I want to make sure we've got product market fit before we start spending those dollars. Yeah.
So following that thread on the international expansion that you did with your former company, a lot of companies think of the challenge as a translation challenge, and that is one component of it. Obviously, with generative AI, translation has become a much easier problem to solve. So people think that internationalization will become immediately, 10x easier. Do you believe that to be true, or do you think that that's just one small component of internationalization and the challenges that come with that?
Oh, I think that's a very small component, if not maybe the smallest component. For my last company, you have to establish trust in each market. And let's take Europe as an example. Germany and Switzerland right beside each other, very different culturally, very different than Spain, very different than Italy, very different than the UK. So, and it goes on and on for every country. So it's one thing to be international. It's another thing to be able to speak. I don't mean their language specifically, but be able to speak the local cultural language and to demonstrate they're going to be there to stay. Too many U.S. companies, I think, give it a shot, and rightly so. They're skeptics of, are they going to be around in a year or 2 or 5 years? So it's demonstrating that commitment. I mean, I went so far as to actually move to London for 2 years when we were launching across Europe. So I spent basically every week traveling to demonstrate that not only are we offering something in your market, but we're building staff here to support you as well. So that's why I say it's a much bigger decision than just offering a product. It comes with much larger investments, particularly if you want to support that client base locally.
Interesting. We talked a little bit about your scaling plans for the future. Part of that relies on funding, of course. Talk to me about your decision around fundraising or not fundraising for this and bootstrapping this company. And also, have you considered or have you done any crowdfunding type? Like, I would imagine that this could be something really suitable for like a Kickstarter. Have you done that? Have you considered that? What's your thought process around that?
Yeah, the fortunate thing for our company is that I had a business before this, and we had a fairly successful exit. So I had some resources to get us off the ground, and have been able to fund the first few years of the business. We did raise an angel round primarily about 18 months ago, primarily to get some different voices in the conversation. I always tell folks it's one thing to spend your own money, it's another thing to spend someone else's money. It just ups the ante quite a bit. So I like having that pressure. I like having a little bit of kind of friction, if you will, to make sure that you're executing as fast as you can. We have started to generate revenue, which is the greatest source of funding, right? So the hope, and it's a different market today than it was 2 years ago in terms of being able to raise capital. So we're really focused on building a sustainable revenue model so that we're not dependent on the whims of or the cycles of the market. With that said, we just closed another angel round. We raised that over the last 6 weeks. This, to your point, though, this is it's very easy to get someone behind the mission of this business, right? Because this is the addressable marketplace is massive. It's global. Everyone's struggling with this. You just have to get them comfortable with the economic side of the business. Can this actually become a viable economic model? So that's where we spend most of our time. And thankfully, we've got some great investors and supporters that believe in us. Now, there will come a time, even with revenue generation, even with a couple angel rounds, where if we want to scale, and with a consumer business, it's going to take a pretty big capital investment, where we will need to go out and raise a proper institutional round. But we're not quite there yet, both from a product market fit perspective and also from a capital needs perspective. And frankly, I just kind of want to see what happens in the world and in the market for the next 6 to 9 months to see if if this is a momentary dip and we bounce back, or if this is more of the new norm where the capital markets are a little more difficult.
Going back to what we talked about earlier at the beginning of the show regarding product market fit and the Sean Ellis model of measuring customer satisfaction, is there a kind of line in the sand that you feel like you can cross to say, yes, we have it, and now let's think about taking money to scale up? Or is it I guess, how do you know when that point happens?
There's probably 3 answers to that question, but they're all interrelated. So one, the Sean Ellis test is definitely part of that. If we're hovering at 30% 6 months from now, then we just haven't made strides. So that would not be a good indicator. The second part of it is we are looking at cohorts of subscriptions by month to look at their usage level over the course of weeks and months. So that retention curve, if you will, or that usage curve, if you will, is very, very helpful for us to understand, all right, when are we losing people? Are we losing people, right? And when does it tail off? So as we start to see these different cohorts, and if their usage declines at a declining rate, that's going to start telling us we're onto something even better than we are today. The data is pretty good right now, and it's getting better month by month. So it feels like some of the feature changes and even marketing and customer experience changes we're making are having an impact, which is terrific. And then the last part of that would just be, frankly, intuition. And that's kind of a bad answer, but honestly, I think sometimes if you're talking to your customers, you'll have a good intuition if it's working or not. If you're seeing those referrals, if if they're posting on social media without being prodded to do so, those types of things are good leading indicators that, hey, you may have something that's working. So we'll view each of those independently, but it will be some kind of combination of all three that ultimately helps us determine whether or not to move forward.
No, everybody hates that when you know it kind of answer, but in a lot of cases it's true, right?
Well, if it were just that, I'd be nervous. So, I mean, I do think you need some metrics and KPIs to keep you honest, and we've got those. But gosh, there's a lot of power, and frankly, it just makes you talk to your customers more, which is probably the most important thing as you go through that product market fit process.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're doing a lot of that. I'd love to know if you can share a story that was really impactful that a customer shared with you about how the product changed their life or their relationships.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. We have a customer in California. He has a 7-year-old son, and he told us this story. We didn't ask him for it. He said, "Look, I figured it out one morning." He goes, "I walked downstairs to have breakfast." He said, "Normally I would pull my phone out, check emails, get ready for work." He said, "That morning I had the RO." He said, "I put my phone away." He said, "I only had it in there for 17 minutes." He said, "But let me tell you," he said, "that 17 minutes changed my life." He said, and we asked him, "So why did it change your life?" Because we talked about two things. His son and he talked about two things. We talked about how things get invented and sharks. Sharks and how things get invented. And he said, "I realized at that moment the power of conversation compounded over weeks and months and years, and the relationship depth that could be created if I just took 17 minutes of basically wasted time to actually lock eyes with that person that's so important to me." And we've got a bunch of stories like that. And I think, you mentioned it earlier. We focus a lot on, yes, if you put your phone down, your relationship with yourself is going to improve 100%. But man, the impact you can have on those that are most important to you, whether that's your partner, spouse, kids, even for 17 minutes, can be life-changing.
I love that. I was expecting you to say something that he had invented some sort of shark device. But no, that's a great story. I love that. As a second-time founder, you built eVestment over, I think it was 17, 18 years, sold that to NASDAQ. Is that part of the Dow Jones company? No.
No, they're separate. Yeah.
So you sold that to NASDAQ. Successful exit for the investors. What lessons do you take away from that experience that allow you to be a better founder the second time around, or what mistakes are you looking to avoid this time?
It's a great question. I think I realized in the first business, and I took this into the second one, that culture really, really matters. Of course, you've got to build something that solves a problem, and the product needs to be good. But man, if you don't focus on culture, it will develop itself. So even early on, I mean, some of our first meetings as a young organization were all around, hey, what do we value? What are our core values, right? For lack of a better phrase, but what do we value? How do we put those into actionable words and phrases? How do we live those out? How do we keep each other accountable? It can't just be a plaque on the wall as an example. So that would be one learning that I carried forward to the business. The second would be, especially early on, I would encourage founders to interview everyone. I think Google said they interviewed up to the first 1,000, which is crazy. That's hard to believe. But I would say at least to the first 50 or maybe even 100, it's important because of the cultural impact. It's important that the founder or founders interview those people. One thing I've never been afraid of, now this may not be the best advice, but one thing I've never been afraid of is working with my friends. That's how the first business started. That's how we started the second business. And I know you could argue that both ways, but man, I've said, look, if I can have a job and work with some of my best friends, what a great opportunity. And of course, there's going to be disagreements and arguments and friction along the way. But as long as everyone comes into it, with eyes wide open and comes at it with forgiving and an open heart, then it can work really well.
Amazing. How many were you at its peak at eVestment, and how big is your team now?
Gosh, the eVestment was almost 500. It's a pretty big organization. and now we are a total of 9. But I got to tell you, I love the 0 to 1, the 0 to 10 stages. I love knowing everyone's spouse and girlfriends and dogs and kids' names. Like, that's just such a fun stage of the business. When you get to be 500, it gets to be more tough, right? There's people all over the world that you've never met, so that's fun for different reasons. But I love this stage of the business where it's such a cohesive team and everyone has a say in everything we're doing. And it's fun for them as well, right? You're not just a cog in the wheel.
Yeah, we'll have to have a separate podcast about the challenges and joys of leading an organization at that scale. Last question here for you before we go into our lightning round. I watched this interview recently with Mark Zuckerberg did with Lex Friedman on Lex's podcast In the Metaverse. I don't know if you saw this one. The technology is unbelievable. We're almost there. We're on the brink of widespread mixed reality. Whether we're a year away or 3 years away or even 5 years away, I don't know, but it's clearly coming. And on the one hand, I think that will unlock our hands from physical devices. I think that the screen that we're attached to, the physical screen, is going to go away in a lot of cases. But I fear that it's going to exacerbate our dependence and relationship with technology and kind of that need for constant digital stimulation if we live in that kind of mixed reality world. Is that something you guys are thinking about? In long term, you're dealing with similar challenges, obviously, with the physical devices, the mobile devices. How are you thinking about mixed reality or metaverse, virtual reality stuff?
Yeah, I've often said that the technology is going to keep getting more integrated into our lives. I was going to say invasive, but integrated is probably a better way to say it. Here's what I cling to, and frankly, I think it's true, and I think you've seen this post-COVID, and we experienced it in COVID. Humans crave connection, real connection, and you'll never get that real connection in the metaverse, no matter how good it gets. I don't believe so. We're even seeing movements on college campuses now where kids are, creating these groups that are device free, and you're seeing Gen Z going to flip phones. So I really think that there's a sea change around relationships and the value of relationships. And there's plenty of data that tells us this is the loneliest, most anxious, depressed society in a long time. And the correlation is there with devices. So this may just be an optimistic view of the universe and the world, but I feel like our need for actual physical human connection will always outpace what technology can create. I hope it does. I was at a restaurant probably 6 months ago now, and normally at a restaurant I'll see families on their phones, and that's a bit depressing, don't get me wrong, but I saw a mom on her laptop and her son was sitting across the booth with a headset on. And I thought, I don't know their family situation. I don't know if she's a single mom. I don't know if she's a divorced mom. I don't know if I don't know anything about it. But what I do know is that she just missed an hour, right? She missed an hour. And he might as well have not even been there, or she might as well have not even been there. So that just breaks my heart more than anything. So it's probably just a little bit of a hopeful optimism. But I do believe that our desire to connect, even like if you and I were in person versus over Zoom, it'd be totally different than it is. And it's great here, but man, it'd be so much better if I were sitting in the room with you. And I do think that'll win out eventually.
Love the optimism. Great way to close out. So we like to end with a lightning round. I'll ask you a few questions. Tell me the first thing that comes to mind. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right. What's one book, newsletter, and or podcast that you recommend most often?
I just read a book by an author named Justin Whitmel Early. It's called Made for People. It just came out 2 months ago. I bought 75 copies of it. I'm giving them away to everyone I know, adults that I know. It's all about adult friendships and the value of those adult friendships. Man, again, back to the human connection. Like, we crave connection, and so many times we live our lives to our kids and we forget about friendships and how beneficial those can be. So that's number one book on my list right now.
Great recommendation. I had not heard of that one. I'll check it out.
I bounce all over the place on podcasts. I love podcasts, so it just depends on my mood. But everything from founder stories to health and fitness and in between. We've got our own podcast. Aro has a podcast. We talk to people who strive to live intentionally. So we have everything from Olympic athletes to authors to parents. It's kind of a fun way for us to have those conversations.
Cool. So follow-up question then. What's one thing that surprised you the most about podcasting?
My co-founder is our host. And one thing that surprised me is how natural it is for him. I love being on podcasts, but to host one, I have so much respect for being on the other side of the mic, for what you do and what he does. So maybe it surprised me how hard it is to actually be the host, which is why he's taken over.
Well, sometimes it's the host, and sometimes it's the guest and the team behind the host that makes it sound good. I appreciate that. What's a common misconception that people have about you?
This is going to sound odd, and I don't even know if this is a misconception, but a lot of people ask me why I'm doing this. I was 43 when eVestment was sold. I had the resources to kind of pack it in and, sit on the golf course or beach or whatever. It just wasn't in me, frankly. So I do think there's a curiosity maybe from people of like, why would you start all over again? And part of that's just kind of in my DNA. But honestly, like, I wouldn't have started another eVestment. I wasn't just in this to start another business like that. I really wanted to start something that could make an impact and maybe change the trajectory for marriages, for families, for culture to a great degree. So that's kind of what's driving me now, is like a bigger purpose than just, building a business per se.
Yeah. I don't think retirement is in the vocabulary of entrepreneurs. I've yet to meet one that is looking forward to retirement.
I hope not. I mean, my kids at dinner the other night, speaking of family dinners and, intentional time, one of my sons said, "Dad, I hope I can, retire at 50. I said, "Son, you don't want that. You don't want that. You're going to want to keep doing something. Now, you may retire professionally, but you've got to stay active intellectually. You've got to stay active physically. You're going to want that, or else it'll just be a slow grind."
Sure. If you could have coffee with any historical figure, dead or alive, who would you choose?
I feel like that's a question I should know the answer to. I should have an immediate answer to. I'm going to mesh two people together. How about that? I think what's interesting to me is Warren Buffett on one hand and Steve Jobs on the other hand, for two very different reasons. Like I'm always like overly impressed with just the attention to detail and the focus on product that Steve had, but also Warren's like very simplistic's the wrong word, but very basic approach to investing that many of us lose, and just his discipline to stay committed to that. But actually, for both reasons, both of them staying committed to what their superpowers were, which probably leads to a different question on superpowers. But yeah, I think a mesh. If I could mold those two guys together, I'd love to have dinner with the combination of both.
That's a scary mashup.
It'd be a weird looking mashup.
No, I mean the power of those two individuals. That's a great answer. Last one here. I think I know the answer to this one, but I'll throw it to you. What's a core value or principle that you live by or try to live by?
I would say it's evolved, honestly. I think you're probably expecting something like intentionality. For me, it's probably more curiosity. I love to read. I love to ask people questions. I mean, this is going to sound ridiculous, but even if I know a lot about something, I don't want people to know that I know a lot about something. So it's just a genuine curiosity about life in general. And I think that's good. Otherwise, I feel like I could lean towards self-centeredness. So curiosity kind of keeps me humble and grounded.
You got me. I did think you were going to say intentionality, but curiosity is mine, so I feel that kindred spirit.
Oh, I like it. That's great.
Awesome. Well, Heath, I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your story, lessons learned along the way. If you want to close us out with any final words you'd like to share with the audience, as well as how can people reach you if they want to continue the conversation, how can people learn about the product, the company? We'll put all those links in the show notes, so just take it away.
Yeah, let me just offer a word of encouragement to the parents out there. First, if you're struggling with this in your family, no shame, no guilt. We're all struggling with it. If you're struggling with it personally, again, these things are amazing and captivating. So don't beat yourself up. Give yourself some grace. But I do offer some encouragement to say, like, this is something that can be changed. It is a habit. It's not an addiction. If you have young kids, you absolutely need to start modeling different behavior today. It doesn't have to be RO. Of course, we'd love that, but it can be a box. It can be a drawer. It can be discipline, although James Clear will tell you that willpower outpaces discipline, but we'll put that aside. But yeah, just a word of encouragement to you're doing a great job. Don't get too hung up on some of the failures. For RO, we are online at goro.com. That's GOARO.com. On socials, we are GoRO Now. We do also host our own podcast where we talk with people who strive to live with intentionality, which has just been so much fun to hear the conversations that come out of that. And we've also started updating the podcast with kind of 15 to 20 minute snippets with some of our customers as well to see how they're actually using RO and how it's changing their lives. So that's another way to check us out.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time, your flexibility in coming on today and sharing with us. Wishing you tons of success. I'm going to be getting myself a device and we'll keep you posted on how it's affected my life and my family and my entrepreneurial journey. So thank you. And we'll be in touch.
Beautiful. Thank you.